This week, I celebrated my 6-year anniversary of coming to Albania. I first touched down in Tirana on the 21st of October for a 3-day holiday, and I never really left. Now, on the 22nd of October, I celebrated by taking part in the Tirana Marathon, and I met lots of Albanians who now live abroad and came back to run the race, and some that have left and then come back as well. Now, I decided to invite 2 of them to the studio to talk in depth about their choices and views on living abroad, progress in Albania, and the role and the rights of the diaspora. I'm joined online today by MP Lavdrim Krashi and in the studio by business owner Ani Demilia. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks very much for joining me. Lavdrim, I'm going to go to you first. Now, you're from Dibra. But you lived in the UK for 20 years and you worked for Brent Council in London as a housing manager, if I'm not wrong. What made you return to England? It sounds like return to Albania. I mean, it sounds like you had your life set up there. What made you come back?
Well, when the country calls you, it's time to make a decision. And for me, having spent more than 2 decades in London, working for local authorities, various local authorities in London, I received a call to come and perhaps, compete to become a member of parliament, an offer which I accepted. I couldn't really refuse. And it's a call of duty, if you like. Time comes in your life when you have to come back to your own country and give your contribution here. Having spent many years working for public services in the UK, I think that I had a lot of things to offer, and I'd like to bring some Britishness into the Albanian political system.
What is that Britishness? I assume you don't mean tea and biscuits and things like that. What do you mean by Britishness?
More like, in my opinion anyway, more like a rule of law, end to impunity, transparency. They all come with a lot of effort. I know that there is no country that is perfect, but for me, having spent a long time in the United Kingdom, has taught me that regardless of your background, regardless of where you come from, who you are, and what you have done or do in a country, there is no real discrimination, and you can achieve what you want to be, and you can do what you want to do, and what you are capable of doing, regardless of your background. So these are, for me, the themes that I would like to bring more into the Albanian political scene, which is, just to repeat myself, more transparency, more openness, more integrity of public servants, and, of course, developing the country in the right direction. Albania has had a tough transition from dictatorship into democracy. But having said that, sometimes we're very hard on ourselves because it has made huge progress since early 1990s. It is today a completely unrecognizable country if you were to compare it with the with the communist times, dictatorship times. So these are the things that I'd like to bring. I know we have a huge Albanian diaspora living abroad, and I'd like all of them to bring their experience into Albania so that we are on par, we are on the same playing level field, if you like, with other European nations.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, the rule of law. I read some statistics today from the World Justice Project that the rule of law ranking for Albania is actually, it's been getting worse over the last couple of years, despite ongoing reforms and pledges, etc. So I have 2 questions for you. Firstly, you've come back with this idea of Britishness and these objectives you want to pursue. What was the reaction you had sort of coming with all these ideas in the current context? And also, what was your impression of the status quo at the moment? Was it a shock for you seeing how things are?
Well, as anything new that happens to people in life, I mean, obviously I'm Albanian, so it doesn't come as a complete shock to me as if I were a foreigner, a British national, for example, in the sense of being born in the United Kingdom. But having said that, when I first came back 2 years ago, I had to get used to some different ways of even communicating like we are now over Skype. The way that public services are seen, perceived by the general public, but also by those who are public servants who get paid by the taxpayer to serve their community is slightly different. As I said, I've worked in public services for more than 20 years in the United Kingdom, and the way in which you must treat your customers is always with respect, with no discrimination, regardless of who they are, where they come from, etc. So in that sense, I have to, so far I have refused, and I'll continue to refuse to change who I am, because although I left Albania when I was a proper adult, really, I was 26 when I came to the United Kingdom. Most of my professional life is in the United Kingdom, and I'd like to bring some of, as I said, some of the ways in which public services are delivered in the UK. I want to bring that to Albania. I'm not saying that the UK is perfect. I'm not saying the European Union is perfect, but it's far different to that in Albania. I find that the Albanian political system is, I mean, we can see, to link it to your second question now, we can see where we are now. The situation is a political situation that it is really in a status quo. It's mainly because a lot of positive things have happened, i.e. the judicial reform, which is a very brave reform that the Albanian government and the Albanian politics in general, from across the spectrum really, undertook a few years ago. It is now starting to become operational. And for me, one of the best things that it has brought is people can see that there can be an end to impunity. So people who have gotten involved in things that they shouldn't have, they do realize that they have to pay a price now. But more importantly, it can serve as a deterrent for current public servants so that they do exactly what the taxpayer pays them to do, which is to serve the public rather than to serve their own personal and very narrow interests.
Now, you've worked in local governments in the UK and politics here, and you've sort of touched on it a bit, but when you came here, was it a bit of a culture shock in terms of how things work? I mean, I know you're Albanian originally, but the British system, as you mentioned, is very, very different. And you've come back here with this British sort of mentality in a way, and you want to apply it to a very different system. And I think it's fair to say, I've lived here for 6 years, corruption is ingrained in every part of society, from the taxi drivers to the people at the top. Was it a culture shock for you here? And have you had opposition, and I don't mean from Sally Berisha, I mean opposition against your British ideas?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Britishness, British politics for that matter, is very well liked amongst the Albanian community at large. So in that sense, I haven't felt any. But as you say, there is no perfect political system. There is no perfect public services anywhere in the world, or indeed private services in the world. But it does, for me, I have to readopt, and it may sound strange because this is my country, but I have to readopt with the way in which they do things in Albania. One thing that I have done, and I'm committed, I have promised myself that one thing I won't do is to change myself. I will continue to deliver services in the way in which I've learned to do in the United Kingdom when I was there as a public servant. And if that differs from the way in which they do them in Albania, it is my legal duty, of course, because as a member of parliament, our job is extremely easy. Only two things we have to do, which is to produce legislation that is in the national interest and in the interest of the electorate. people that have voted for me in my area. So as long as those two boxes are ticked, I'm fine. I can do anything. I can approve and agree to any legislation. But in a broader terms, as you mentioned earlier, yes, there is corruption. I don't think any country is free of corruption, but it is more notable in the Albanian society. Unfortunately, for more than 30 years, we've had this transition, which is taking longer and longer and longer and longer. And it has, in a way, it's the main thing. Corruption is the main thing that holds the country back. However, I'd like to see the glass half full rather than half empty. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some brave reforms that the government of Albania has undertaken in the previous few years, but also politics in general. I'm very much hoping that even the latest developments in Albania will help it to have a better society, to have a society that is equal for everyone. So there should be no differentiation in the way in which the public is treated because of where they are from in Albania, or because of what political party they belong to, or their political beliefs, etc. So the justice system for me is the key. It will help to change, because it is the first time in Albania for the past 30 years, and obviously during a dictatorship it was a different matter, but it is the first time that the public is seeing that the judiciary is treating people equal. And that's what we are. We are equal in terms of law and how it is applied. So I'm very much hoping that, and I will do my utmost while I'm a member of parliament, to clear up the system. There are some of us, and it does hurt me, it does pain me to say it, but there are corrupt people since early 1990s in our system, be it in political parties, be it in government, both local and national. But it is our duty to get rid of them and to clean up politics, because it is time for altruists to serve the country. There is nothing wrong with people who want to be rich and to make money. The only problem is that it's not the public sector when you do that, it's the private sector. So whoever wants to be a millionaire or billionaire, they need to go to the private sector. The public sector is a sector that serves the public. It serves the people.
Now, I want to just move on to one other topic. I have two more questions for you, mindful of your time. Now, as a Brit in Albania, people always say to me, what are you doing here? All Albanians want to go to the UK and you want to come here. Now, you've lived in the UK, you're Albanian and you're back here now. Is life in the UK really as great as it's sort of made out to be, or some Albanians sort of think it is? And what are the big problems that are facing the UK that maybe we don't feel here in Albania?
Well, that's a key question, and I thank you for it, because in Albania what I find is that, well, there's that saying that the grass is always greener on the other side. So they think that once you make it to the United Kingdom, pavements are paved in gold, and money grows on trees, for example, and that is far from the truth. The truth is that you have to work hard. You have to, well, first of all, make it there in a legal way. I know how you feel, because they say that to you, what are you doing in Albania as a Brit? They say that to me too. Why the hell did you come back to Albania? But for me, it's important that the message that is given to people is a message that it is hard. Wherever you are, you have to work hard. And I know we had that concern last year, where a large number of my countrymen made it to the United Kingdom illegally, uninvited. And if you're uninvited, I'm afraid you won't be welcome, in the sense that it is hard to find employment. It is hard to integrate within the society in terms of getting medical care, getting education, and getting other services, which are very important. Now, the UK, as we know, is one of the biggest economies in the world, really. It does have its problems. I know at present, for example, it's going through some issues. But for Albanians, the main message is that if you want to go to the United Kingdom, you can do so legally, not illegally. And we've actually seen, as a result of some measures that both governments, the Albanian and the British one, have taken in the past year or so, it has been followed by some agreements agreed by our two prime ministers, virtually, but also in person. Prime Minister Rama visited Mr. Sunak earlier this year, and they agreed on quite a number of things. As a result of those agreements, the number of illegal migration to the United Kingdom from Albania has fallen by 92% this year compared to last year. So I suppose the message from me is it's hard, because I can't say to people, don't go to the United Kingdom, because I'm one of those who made it to the United Kingdom, albeit legally. But if you need to go there, do so legally. But more importantly, there are opportunities in Albania. Both our governments are working very hard now. For example, the UK has left the European Union 5 years ago, technically only a year and a half ago, but it hasn't actually left Europe. And the United Kingdom has huge interests in the Balkans. And Albania is a great ally of the United Kingdom. Albanians love Britain and they love the British people. So I think there will be, or there can be, opportunities for us to have a bigger trade relationship between our two nations, between our two countries. I know again that 2 years ago trade levels were extremely low. Well, they have trebled in the past 2 years, but it's still very moderate. It's only about 150 million pounds a year. So there are opportunities. There are in areas such as tourism, for example, or infrastructure in general, including the energy production. There are ways which can help both our countries to increase their trade between the two countries, and help Albania and Albanians realize that they can actually build a future in Albania. There's nothing wrong with visiting. There's nothing wrong with going to other places. But the only way to go there should be legal, not illegal.
Now, I want to talk about one other matter, and that's to do with the diaspora. So Albanians who are living in the UK or in other parts of the world, Germany, the US, Canada, you know, there's more Albanians outside of Albania than there are inside Albania. And I want to ask you about diaspora voting. You know, we know very well that the Albanian economy is propped up in many ways by remittances from abroad, from the diaspora, and there is an ongoing movement to push for voting rights for Albanians who are living abroad in the general and the local elections. What is your view on this? Should the diaspora be able to vote in elections? Should there be any limitations or conditions on this?
In short, I know the question was long, but I completely get the question. Albania is a member of NATO. Albania is the doorstep of the European Union. And the Albanian Parliament and other institutions must make sure that the huge Albanian diaspora abroad should have the right to vote for general elections. It's a different matter when it comes to local elections because there are local issues, but for general elections, elections that elect the parliament and elect the government of the country. It is time. There has been excuses raised for very many years, but now is time, in my opinion, to make sure that every Albanian who lives abroad can cast their vote where they are. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other nations have done it. It can be done. It should be done.
Why is it not being done? I've been here for 6 years and I've heard it rumbling on in the background for 6 years, but yet there's no progress. Why is it not being done?
Well, I mean, as they say, when lawyers get involved, it's a bit of an issue. So for 2021 elections, for example, the Albanian parliament has passed legislation to make sure that this is the case. This is done since 2021. However, there were some issues which was, I don't want to bore and to make the conversation, to derail the conversation really, but the fact of the matter is that in 2021 it wasn't realized. We have to make sure that it's done for 2025. There is work in progress in Parliament and in the Elections Committee. So I'm very hopeful personally that it will be done in the next general elections. But it does need political will, which we have now. We seem to have political will that the diaspora, Albanian diaspora from abroad, can participate in elections.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your time and for all your answers. And I hope we will have a chance to discuss the impending diaspora vote before the next elections.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.